A Quiet Place. A movie where making a noise might just get you killed. Should we get on the hilltops and scream on the top of our lungs at how great this movie is, or should it slink off quietly into the night? We get into that on the Bloody Breakdown next. Okay, so make sure to stick around towards the end of this film if you want to know some spoilers or discuss the film while going into the things that actually happen. So stick around for that. If you don't want to stick around for that, just basically listen to this first half where I kind of get into the gist of it without giving much of the film away. Quiet Place deals with a family who is stuck in a rural area after some sort of weird outbreak has occurred where there's these really powerful, strong creatures that are seemingly, from what we get in the film, they're in the woods and whatnot, and they prey on anything with sound. They hunt by sound. They're blind, but they go by sound. And they go by sound in the sense of, you know, if you make any kind of noise, it attracts them. And the family that is led by Krasinkski, who also directs this film, and he's also one of the screenwriters of the script. So he did like triple duty for this film. Is basically trying to survive. They're also trying to make contact without trying to make a sound, which is, you know, you can imagine how hard that is, with anybody of the outside space where they are to figure out what's going on. John Krasinski's character, the father, has done a really good job. He seems to be some sort of scientist where he's trying to figure out, you know, what these creatures are, and you know, how to kind of find their weakness, how many they are. And basically that's the gist of the film. It's a very slice of life sort of horror picture in the sense that it's a situation. So there's some great pros to this movie that I liked. First of all, the atmosphere and the tension. That was phenomenal. I mean, they definitely, you know, from the title that it's called A Quiet Place. You know from the plot synopsis, the very short plot synopsis, that these creatures, whatever they are, go by sound. Okay, so, I mean, this isn't the first time that we have seen a horror picture where whatever is chasing the humans goes by sound, right? That they're blind or whatever like that. So it's not, you know, something brand new, but in that sense, like I said before, then that leaves it to the creator of the film to make it their own. And I think what was really great about this film is that they did make it their own. They did do something in creating the suspension of disbelief in a way, but not even, because they made you believe that this could be a way that people would adapt. You could tell they sat down and they did some sort of research, probably trial and error, like how would people be able to walk through the woods and through certain areas without making a sound, you know, things of that nature. Pretty smart throughout, where you really believed they had to live like this. That was a really great thing, because it made you believe it, so much so that the tension was there if there was a sound, right? It's so quiet that if there is a sound, the family is so believable in their terror. And you, in coming in on this, you know, if you haven't seen the creature yet, you know, you're like, okay, well, you know, how like scary is this creature? And they definitely did a very great job of letting you know how brutal and how high the stakes were in this film when it came to these creatures. I'm not going to explain why they do that, how they do that in the first 5 minutes, but within the first 5 to 10 minutes of this movie, they let you know that these creatures are serious business and that there is a real honest terror, like no one's safe. The other thing about this film that I liked was the family. You know, sometimes you have characters, especially family situations, where the characters are obnoxious, or, you know, maybe you just like one character out of the whole entire cast and you kind of attach yourself onto them. In this case, I thought the whole family worked in a way of, you know, you kind of felt the love, you felt the dysfunction between all of them. Now, I didn't like all the characters the same amount, and I'll get into that in my cons, but for the most part, the family was not obnoxious in the sense of how they were dealing with this situation. It helped that, you know, obviously the lead character is like some sort of scientist, and the mother is also some sort of like professional because she knows certain things. But, you know, it was smart that they did that. So it's not so much, you know, trying to see if this family fumble on things, but trying to see this family that is capable, still trying to function. So that was really, you know, that made sense for me, and I was glad they made that decision because I liked the characters. They were capable. So that helped even more with the atmosphere and the tension, because sometimes you can have these movies where the characters are just stupid. Think you have hope for them, and it's sometimes nice when you can watch a horror picture that you have hope for the characters even in the most dire situations. It raises the stakes, it raises your blood pressure like a good horror film should do. So the monsters of this movie were really good. I put it under a pro that these monsters were terrifying. They were scary, and I really like the fact that it wasn't this sort of thing where it's like you don't see the monsters until like the very end, you know, which I think is, you know, I mean, if they're as terrifying as they should be, it shouldn't matter when you see them, right? And in this case, they did a really good job. I don't think that's a spoiler in saying that, because you'll see them very early on. That didn't make it lose the tension for me. If anything, it heightened the tension seeing what these creatures were. Now, in that same sense, I think they did a good job on the monsters, but I'm gonna say, and I want to be able to say this without really spoiling it, like telling you what the monsters look like from jump, but the monsters were definitely a combination of other popular monsters that we've seen. I'll go into that a little bit in the spoiler section of this video, but not that that's a bad thing, right? I mean, if it's not broke, you don't have to fix it. I mean, in the sense that, you know, if these creatures that we've seen in other movies are scary, why not combine them to be an even scarier culmination, which they did in this film. To the point where there were times as I was watching it where I was slightly uncomfortable. I was like, I'm uncomfortable, but maybe not in a bad way, just like really on pins and needles for this family. Like, oh my gosh. Like, you actually are learning something if you were ever in this situation. Like, how would you distract if a creature was, you know, just going by sound in a very smart way? Because like I said, this is not the first time this kind of film has been done, where there's some sort of monster that is blind and goes by sound. It's not the first time. So the fact that they could take a deeper look into it to make it so it's not so much a suspension of disbelief, but you are brought to believe how this could happen was a plus on their end. So with that, there are, of course, no movie is perfect except maybe Clueless. You can judge me all you want on that, but no movie is perfect. So there were definitely some cons. Not a lot. There wasn't like a long list, and nothing I think to disqualify this from being one of the better films that I've seen so far in 2018. One of the cons, and I can talk about two of the cons in brief on this section of the video without getting into spoilers, but to really understand why it was such a con, these two were such cons, you kind of have to stick around for the spoiler part. But the two cons of this film was the little girl, the young girl in the film, and also a little bit, and I'm gonna have to explain this in the spoiler area, the emotional manipulation that happens in certain parts of this film. Now let me explain, right? Okay, so the little girl, I felt like, without getting into too much of it, there's this certain trope in horror pictures or in thrillers or anything where there's stakes and danger, where the teenagers are just so bratty to the point where they make the dumbest decisions, right? Like where certain stuff happen because they're going through teen angst. Now, teen angst is a normal part of being a teen, right? In normal circumstances. I just think in horror pictures where there's like a zombie apocalypse, or there's creatures from outer space, or, you know, where there's some real stakes going on, I just find it so, that's the one part where it just isn't believable to me. And it's not so much this movie's fault, but because I've seen it in so many, where the teen just can't seem to get over their daddy issues, or their issues with their parents, or something that happens that just makes them so mad because it's drama and it's interpersonal stuff, and they can't seem to get past it, to the point where they make decisions that cause more problems, where it's like, this could have been avoided if this teenager wasn't still acting like they weren't in a horror picture. I felt like it was a slight trope that they descended a little bit into, making it so that her angsty issues kind of are a catalyst for things without going too much into it. So I felt like that was a little bit of a con, only because I've seen it so much, and I just thought this film was so smart that it didn't need to do that. Is she really throwing a tantrum right now? Like, right now? The second con, the emotional manipulation I was talking about, was, when I say emotional manipulation, I'm talking about where a narrative is created and certain things happen that are a little bit contrived in order to get an emotional reaction out of you. Now, this isn't like regular storytelling where it's like, okay, you know, something sad happens. I hope whoever's reading this or watching it understands that this was sad. That's different. I'm talking about the narrative has already been set, but something is so jarring and so happens where it's like it doesn't really fit with the rest of the way that things could have been, where it was clearly thrown in to get a really strong emotional reaction to you. And I just, once again, this goes back to how I thought the screenplay was so well done. It didn't need that. I can't really spoil that for you at this section, but watch out for it towards the end. There's a definite, very strong to me, emotional manipulation that happens where you sit there and you're like, I didn't need that. Should you give A Quiet Place a stab? Yes, you should definitely give A Quiet Place a very quiet stab, or a loud one. The creatures aren't here after us right now, and the monsters are scary. And I think when you have a creature feature where the monsters are genuinely terrifying, you've done your job. So this is definitely stab approved. Don't be shy and don't be quiet, because you can comment down below to let me know what you think of A Quiet Place. And if you haven't seen it, if you have any questions, you know, what are some of your favorite kind of monsters that really genuinely terrify you? And don't say clowns, because clowns aren't scary. Comment down below and let me know what you think. Also, be sure to subscribe so you are one of the first ones to know when I upload my new videos weekly. Okay, so yeah, spoilers. Let's just get into this. The little girl, it works. She's a pivotal character. What I hated about it was that she was just, okay, so her mistake was that she gave her other little brother, the one that gets killed in the very beginning, the rocket, but he grabs the batteries and it makes a sound and the creature comes and gets him. And basically like 4, 5, 6, 7 months later, she feels very guilty about this, and she also kind of projects into thinking that her father blames her for her brother's death. So this causes a tension between them. To me, I could understand that tension, but I also felt like it was a bit put on stronger than it needed to be, because I'm like, why is she mad? I mean, I get the guilt, but I'm kind of wondering why she's angry at him, the father. Because from what they show in the film, he's not really giving any vibes that he's angry at her. He's kind of just, you know, he's depressed because he's in some sort of weird apocalypse where there's creatures and they're no longer the top of the food chain, humans. And she just seems to be really angsty about the situation. Yes, she misses her youngest brother, but it was kind of like, I just felt like it was really put on, where it was like, and it was necessary for the emotional manipulation part that came later, which was the father dying. That was so unnecessary. And in order to save the kids, the little girl and her other brother, he makes a sound because he's out there outside of the car. And so he does this whole sign language of "I've always loved you" to his daughter, because mind you, they've had this subplot of them being at odds for most of the film, which, like I said, was a little bit put on. And it seemed like it was a little bit put on just for this moment where he basically does this, calls the creature to him, and gets killed. This makes no sense to me because he's been so smart up until this moment. I'm like, so he gets into the field, he picks up a shovel. Of all the like scientific things he had, of all the traps and things he laid before, of all the things he was doing, he picks up a shovel, and his only way of being able to save his kids as the creature is on the truck is to yell and sacrifice himself. To me, I thought it was a little emotionally manipulative. Yes, I felt very sad. I kind of got teary-eyed, but I thought to myself, I shouldn't have to be teary-eyed. You didn't need to try to make me cry for this plot to work. For the emotional stakes to land. He could have still lived. And I thought to myself, such a great play. You don't have to contrive emotion. You can just the emotion was already there throughout the whole thing with the family, with the first loss that the family experienced with the little boy in the beginning. This was a good movie with or without that. In fact, that kind of cheapened it a little bit for me. So those are my two main cons, and I felt like I had to, in order to explain it, I had to kind of do the spoilers of why. But yeah, other than that, it was a good film. I was scared. I don't know if I'd sit down and it wasn't one of those movies where I'd run to see it again because it made me so uncomfortable. But I guess that's a good thing, right? When you are genuinely scared of a film, when you're genuinely man, I am really a little bit terrified, which I was. So it did its job. I mean, it's a horror movie. It has to do its job. So do you agree or disagree with my spoilerish cons of the film? Comment down below and let me know. Let me know what you think. And also let me know, once again, what your favorite, most terrifying monsters are that really just creep you out. Comment down below and let me know. And also be sure to subscribe so that you are one of the first to find out when I publish my new videos. Thanks again for watching. Let's get creepy together.